The first time I truly understood betrayal, it wasn't in whispers behind closed doors or in the subtle glances that made my chest tighten. It was in the sunlight, sharp and unyielding, falling across the white lilies that carpeted the driveway of the Carter Ranch, and in my father's smile as he handed a leather folder to the woman who wasn't my mother. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I smiled because grief has a strange way of sharpening memory, and mine remembered every promise, every secret my mother had whispered before she died. My father, Richard Carter, believed he could erase her legacy with one signature. He was wrong. The day had started like any other funeral in Texas high society, sun blazing above the sprawling pastures, white tents flapping in the wind, and reporters pretending they weren't waiting for a scandal. Guests murmured softly as we lined up in front of the polished oak casket, their faces stiff with sympathy and curiosity. My mother, Margaret Hamilton Carter, had been the heart of this land for nearly a century. Her family's blood etched into every fence post, every barn beam. And yet there, he stood beside her coffin, his arm brushing the young, polished figure of Vanessa Moore, 26 years old, adorned in diamonds that had once belonged to my mother. My stomach twisted. The world seemed to slow as he smiled at her and said, "I want to honor Margaret by giving Vanessa what she helped me preserve, the Carter Ranch." The crowd gasped. Cameras flashed. I felt the ground beneath me tremble, not with grief, but with anticipation. I stepped closer, my voice clear as glass. "You could start with thank you for stealing from the dead." Vanessa's smile froze. My father's jaw tightened. "Olivia, not here," he hissed. "No, exactly here," I shot back. "You think Mom can't hear this? You think this circus honors her?" Vanessa leaned in, her voice barely a whisper, meant only for me. "Careful, sweetheart. You don't want to make enemies before you inherit nothing." I laughed softly, a sound that cut through the tension like a knife. "You've already inherited my father's lies. Let's see how long you can keep them." The priest cleared his throat, urging the procession toward the gravesite. I followed silently, each step deliberate, watching as the coffin was lowered into the earth. My father didn't look once at my mother. His hand rested on Vanessa's back, guiding her for the cameras. And then a strange calm settled over me, a sense of my mother's presence in the warm Texas air, scented with lilies. "Silence is power," I imagined her whispering. "Don't speak until you're ready to win." I did not cry. I did not scream. I smiled, not the smile of a mourner, but the smile of someone who already knew the next move. After the crowd thinned and the last of the floral arrangements wilted under the late afternoon sun, I drove alone along the long dirt road that cut through the sprawling pastures. The ranch inherited and cherished by my mother's family for generations lay ahead. Its barns, fences, and rolling hills whispered her touch, not his. Inside the main house, still steeped in the scent of lavender and ink, I moved directly to my mother's study. There, on her immaculate desk, rested a sealed envelope with my name written in her elegant hand. I broke the wax seal and read the words 3 times before their meaning crystallized. The old stable. The one she had renovated, herself, was the key. Beneath a loose floorboard, she had hidden a small metal box inside a USB drive, a folded letter, and the trust documents she had painstakingly arranged. 70% of the ranch's ownership had been transferred into a private trust with me named as successor. Not my father, not Vanessa. I closed the laptop, letting the weight of her foresight settle over me. He thought he owned this land because he paid the bills, but ownership isn't money, it's memory. And my mother had buried her legacy deep enough that no amount of greed could ever unearth it. The sun had dipped behind the western hills, painting the ranch in shades of pink and gold when I stepped out of the study and let the wind carry the scent of wild sage into my lungs. The stables creaked as I pushed open the heavy doors, dust motes dancing in the last slanted beams of sunlight. There in the quiet corner my mother had claimed for her sketches and plans, I found the metal box tucked beneath the loose floorboard. My hands trembled as I lifted the USB drive. The folded letter and the trust documents feeling the weight of generations resting in my palms. This was more than property. This was memory legacy and proof that my mother had always known how to protect what she loved. 2 days after the funeral, the ranch had transformed into a glittering stage for Vanessa's new empire. The front gates gleamed with fresh gold lettering announcing the Carter estate, as if history had started anew under her reign. Luxury cars lined the drive, socialites and journalists mingling, snapping photos, whispering into microphones. She stood on the grand staircase, radiant and smug, all smiles and champagne, while my father hovered at her side, his hand pressed lightly on her back as though to claim her as territory. I parked my truck at the edge of the driveway, letting the dust settle around me. I could have turned and driven away, let the storm of public spectacle rage without me. But something deeper defiance duty, a sharp instinct I had inherited from my mother, pushed me forward. Inside, the music faltered as I stepped across the marble floors, heels clicking with the precision of someone who had come to take back what was rightfully hers. Whispers followed me. "That's his daughter," someone murmured. Vanessa's smile stiffened, but she didn't falter. "Olivia, how wonderful you could join us. I know how much this place means to your family." She said, her tone syrupy, but her eyes flickered with unease. "Your family?" The words tasted like poison. Did I miss the part where my mother's name got removed from the foundation stone? She tilted her head, her perfect composure beginning to crack. "Oh, that old engraving. We're updating the branding modernization, you know." I walked past her, stopping at the wall where my mother's portrait used to hang. In its place, a massive mirror reflected my tired eyes. "That painting belonged here," I murmured. Vanessa's lips parted in a flicker of irritation. "Things change, darling." I turned to her slowly. "Yes, but history doesn't, and this ranch has a long memory." The room grew silent. Guests drifted toward the buffet, pretending not to listen, but the air was charged. My father finally spoke, his voice tight. "Olivia, enough. This isn't the time." "No," I said softly, taking deliberate steps toward the exit. "You're right. It's not the time for me. It's the time for you to enjoy your new empire while it still feels real." I paused at her side, close enough for her perfume to sting. "Just one piece of advice," I whispered. "When you live in someone else's house, don't get too comfortable rearranging the ghosts." Her smile faltered thin and brittle. "Excuse me," she said. I stepped into the night, the sky bruised purple above the hills, storm clouds gathering the first drops of rain, cool and sharp on my face. The storm felt like the world's own acknowledgement that the reckoning was coming. Vanessa thought she had won. My father thought he had buried my mother's legacy. But storms like time reveal what has been buried too long. And I had a plan. By morning, I was already on the road to Dallas, the USB drive and trust papers tucked safely in my bag. The courthouse awaited Eleanor Blake. The attorney who had served my mother faithfully for over 20 years expected me. I could feel her presence in the lobby before I saw her, a quiet acknowledgement that the fight was about to begin. "Miss Carter," she said, adjusting her glasses. "Miss Blake has been expecting you." Her tone was calm but alert, as if she already knew the world I was about to enter. I placed the USB and trust documents on her desk. Her expression shifted from curiosity to awe as she scanned the files. "Good Lord," she murmured. "She really did it." "What?" I asked, my throat tight with anticipation. "Your mother created a conditional trust. 70% of the ranch is in your name, protected by an automatic clause. If your father ever tries to transfer ownership or gift the property for personal reasons, the entire estate reverts to you." Shock, satisfaction, disbelief, they all collided in my chest. He had no idea. He had thought control meant ownership, but my mother had always been 3 steps ahead. Eleanor handed me a second file, a small flash drive labeled in my mother's careful handwriting, "For my daughter when he betrays us." My hands shook as I held it, the weight of her foresight settling like stone in my chest. "Can I watch it now?" I asked. "Not yet," Eleanor said gently. We need to present it officially. The trust activates through the probate court. Let him think he's still in control." I exhaled slowly, letting the tension in my shoulders ease just a fraction. He had no idea how thoroughly he had miscalculated. The rain began again as I drove back to the ranch. It was steady and cold, drumming against the roof of my truck like a relentless warning. The past few days had blurred into a haze of anger, grief, and clarity, and now the storm felt like a baptism. Every drop was washing away the helplessness I had carried. Since the funeral, every flash of lightning illuminating the path my mother had prepared for me. When I arrived, the workers were unloading boxes of furniture, placing them carefully in rooms that would never belong to Vanessa. She waved from the porch, radiant as though the rain and the storm outside were irrelevant to her curated world of perfection. I smiled back calmly, deliberately, letting her think her victory was unshakable. "Hope you're making yourself comfortable," I called. "It's not every day someone decorates a house they don't own." Her laugh was light airy, but there was a flicker of something unsteady in her eyes. By Friday, rumors had begun to swirl. The Texas wind carried whispers of my father's plans, marriages, sales, new investments. I didn't correct a single one. The louder the noise, the quieter my move could remain. I watched from the glass towers of Carter Holdings in downtown Dallas, my father's reflection etched in the windows above. He had built an empire on confidence, or at least on what people mistook for it. Today, that illusion would crumble. Inside the office, his assistant barely looked up. "He's in a meeting." "Not anymore," I said, walking past her and pushing through the double doors. The office was immaculate, cold, and meticulously arranged like the rest of his life. My father stood by the window phone in hand. Vanessa perched on his desk, scrolling heels clicking against the mahogany with the impatience of someone who assumed she owned not only the ranch, but the world. "Olivia." He sighed without turning. "You can't keep making a scene every time you don't get what you want." "Funny," I said. "That's exactly what I was going to tell you." Vanessa glanced up, a smirk playing on her lips. "Shouldn't you be grieving, dear?" "I am," I said flatly. "Just not for who you think." I pulled a printed copy of the trust from my coat pocket and dropped it on his desk. "From what I understand, you just violated Clause 7. No transfer of property for personal affection or gain. You didn't gift Vanessa the ranch. You legally surrendered it." His face paled, confidence crumbling under the weight of the documents. "You don't understand the implications," he said, voice, tight teeth clenched. "Oh, I do," I cut in. "You lost everything the second you tried to erase Mom. The court will confirm it soon enough." Vanessa's smirk vanished, replaced with unease, the first crack in her flawless mask. I turned and left the office, the storm outside now full and relentless. The rain hit hard against the glass as I climbed into my truck, adrenaline still thrumming in my veins. He had thought I was defending, reacting. He didn't understand I was starting the war. Every step my mother had planned, every clause in her trust, every hidden document in the stables was a piece of strategy. And by morning, the battlefield would be ready. The courthouse loomed under a low gray sky. I had barely slept. Every flash of lightning the night before had replayed my mother's voice. "Silence is power. Speak only when the truth cannot be ignored." I walked inside, simple black suit hair pinned back, the weight of generations on my shoulders. Vanessa arrived in white, clinging to my father's arm as though she could charm the law itself. Cameras clicked. The air inside felt electric, a silent drumbeat of anticipation. Judge Peterson looked down from the bench. "Proceed." Eleanor stood beside me, calm but sharp as a blade. Eleanor's voice cut through the tense courtroom like a blade. "Your Honor, this is not a dispute over ownership. This is the execution of a trust created and filed legally by Margaret Hamilton Carter 6 months before her death." She handed the clerk a sealed flash drive. "Exhibit A." The lights dimmed, and the screen flickered to life. My mother appeared healthy, radiant, her eyes fierce as ever. My breath caught. "If you're watching this," she began, her voice steady, deliberate. Then Richard has made the mistake I feared most, trading legacy for ego. This ranch was born from Hamilton blood built with Hamilton hands, and if my husband dares to give away what he never built, my daughter, Olivia, becomes sole heir and guardian of every acre. He forfeits all rights legally, morally, and spiritually. The courtroom was silent. My father's face had gone pale, the arrogance draining away, leaving something small, vulnerable, almost human. Vanessa's hands clutched her purse tightly, the diamond bracelet on her wrist jingling nervously. My mother's voice continued softer now, but still commanding. To my daughter, you are always meant to protect what's real. Don't fight with anger, win with truth. The video ended, the screen going black, leaving the room echoing with her presence. It felt like she was there, standing beside me, breathing into every corner of the room. The judge cleared his throat. Mrs. Blake, do you have evidence that the defendant transferred the property in question? Eleanor nodded. We do, Your Honor. Public footage from Mrs. Carter's funeral shows Mr. Carter presenting the deed to his mistress, Miss Moore, as a gift of appreciation. The projector flickered again, replaying the moment that had burned itself into my memory. The leather folder, my father's smug smile, Vanessa's practiced tears. Whispers rippled through the courtroom. Even the reporters seemed to lean closer, drawn to the inevitability of what was unfolding. Per the trust, Eleanor said, voice steady, ownership of the Hamilton Carter Ranch automatically transfers to Olivia Carter, effective immediately. The judge signed the papers with a deliberate motion, the scratch of his pen echoing like a gavel striking thunder. Vanessa shot up from her seat. This can't be happening. That's my home. I stood slowly facing her, calm and deliberate. It was never yours. You can't steal what was never for sale. Her eyes glimmered with anger, fear, disbelief. You think this makes you powerful? She spat. It makes me my mother's daughter, I said simply. My father's voice, hoarse and small, broke the tense silence. Olivia, please. We can fix this. I looked at him steadily, seeing the man I had once known reduced to someone who had overplayed his hand. Really look at yourself, Dad. Look at what you've become. He flinched, guilt flickering across his face, but there was no defense left. The official documents were handed to me. My hands didn't shake this time. Sunlight spilled through the courthouse windows as I stepped outside. Reporters swarmed cameras, flashing microphones thrust forward. I said only one thing. Legacy doesn't belong to those who take it. It belongs to those who remember. By the time the court order hit public record, the Carter empire began to crack. Investors pulled out. Partners demanded statements. The same anchors who once praised my father now called him the man who lost a $3 billion ranch to his own daughter. Vanessa vanished overnight, packing her designer life before sunrise, leaving unpaid bills and a trail of scandal in her wake. My father stayed behind, small, quiet, stripped of power, but still living among the ruins of what he had once thought eternal. I returned to the ranch that weekend. His car sat under the oak tree my mother had planted on her wedding day. I found him in the stables, staring at the horses, silent. He didn't look at me. You came to gloat, he asked finally. No, I said softly. I came to see what's left of you. He laughed bitterly. What's left? A name dragged through the mud, I said. A daughter who knows her worth. He turned toward me, eyes bloodshot, voice cracking. I made mistakes, but I built this legacy. You built walls, I said. Mom built the legacy. And when she realized you'd trade it for vanity, she built protection instead. He flinched like I'd struck him. You sound just like her. I hope so, I whispered. The silence stretched between us, broken only by the soft rustle of the horses in the stables. For a moment, I saw the man my father once was buried beneath layers of arrogance, pride, and ego. He exhaled slowly, a long, quiet sound that seemed to carry the weight of years he'd never acknowledged. Do you know what it feels like, he murmured, to realize your daughter was smarter than you ever gave her credit for? I met his gaze steadily. Yes, I said softly. It feels like justice." He looked away first, staring out across the pastures where the wind bent the tall grass like waves. "What will you do now?" he asked, voice lighter, almost fragile. "Rebuild, rebrand," I said. "Turn this place into something worth my mother's name again." He nodded slowly, defeated, and for the first time I didn't feel triumph or malice. I felt balance. "Then I guess it's yours now," he said. "No," I replied, stepping toward the door. "It always was." That night, I signed the final documents transferring Carter Holdings into the Hamilton Foundation for Environmental Renewal, a nonprofit dedicated to wildlife preservation and therapy programs. The empire my father had used to dominate now bore my mother's maiden name, her values, her quiet strength, woven into every decision. The ranch, once a battlefield of greed and deceit, began to breathe again. 6 months later, the land looked alive, not as an empire of ego, but as a kingdom of peace. The winter winds had softened into spring air wildflowers, pushing through soil that had once soaked up my mother's tears. The gate still bore the Carter name, but beneath it hung a new sign in wrought iron, Margaret's Meadow, a place for renewal. Every morning I rose before dawn, brewed coffee in the chipped mug my mother loved, and walked to the stables. The horses welcomed me with soft nickers, their steady rhythm grounding me. Elena, the new operations manager, joined with her clipboard. "Therapy group arrives at 9, she said. "Veterinary teams at noon." I nodded. The donations had tripled and the programs were flourishing. I smiled quietly, feeling the kind of satisfaction that wasn't loud or performative. Pride didn't begin to cover it. Maybe gratitude, maybe redemption, certainly peace. The portraits of my parents still hung in the hall, but my mother's stood at the center once more, restored to its rightful place. The mirror Vanessa had installed was gone, replaced by an old photograph of my mother on horseback, wind in her hair, laughing like she had never known fear. One afternoon, a black sedan rolled up the long gravel road. My father stepped out, smaller, somehow gentler. He'd been living quietly in a nearby town since the scandal broke, stripped of his power but not of his humanity. I met him halfway down the path. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. "You look just like her," he said finally. "Every day a little more." "I know," I replied softly. He held out a letter, worn and trembling slightly. "I wrote this a dozen times. You don't have to read it. I needed to try." I took it without opening it. Some things are better said aloud, the wind carrying them across the pastures. "I was wrong, Olivia," he said, "about everything, about love, about legacy. I thought I could control it." "Legacy isn't control," I said quietly. "It's what remains when control is gone." I looked out across the valley where children from the therapy program brushed horses and laughed softly. "She taught me that," I said, voice catching slightly. "And I think you just learned it." He gave a small, sad smile. "I guess I did." As he walked away, I called out, "Dad." He paused. "I forgive you." I said, "But that doesn't mean you get to come back." He nodded once, understanding. Then he disappeared down the long gravel road, leaving me with the ranch, the horses, and the legacy my mother had entrusted to me. That evening, I stood by the fence watching the sun bleed gold across the horizon. The land stretched wide and endless hours again, free of lies, rich with memory. I whispered to the wind, "It's done, Mom. He can't hurt this place anymore." The horses stirred the scent of wild sage carried on the breeze, and for the first time in years I felt completely still. Revenge had ended. Justice had spoken. Peace, real and quiet, had finally come home. If this story touched you, inspired you, or reminded you of the power of legacy and truth, please like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment below telling us what justice, family, or resilience means to you. You might inspire someone else today.